They were obsessed with winning at that point. What it made me think about was us with Boston. I looked at them and said, they're us.
When the run's over, you know it's over. And it was over for us.
A new basketball king.
Jordan was Jordan. He the best player on the planet. He just needed some help.
For years, the Detroit Pistons ruled the Eastern Conference through intimidation, grit, and the infamous Jordan rules. They were the bullies of basketball, back-to-back champions who thrived on breaking opponents' will. No team felt that punishment more than the Chicago Bulls. Year after year, Michael Jordan took the floor against Isiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and the rest of the bad boys, only to be sent home bruised and empty-handed. But by 1991, everything had changed. The Bulls were no longer the scrappy underdogs fighting for survival. They were battle-tested, disciplined, and led by Jordan, who had grown into not just the league's best scorer, but its most complete player. Behind Phil Jackson's triangle offense, Chicago had the best record in the East and carried a quiet confidence into the playoffs. Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals became the defining moment of that shift. On that night, Jordan didn't just beat the Pistons. He humiliated their leaders, Isiah and Laimbeer, on the biggest stage. Their tactics failed. Their pride was shattered, and the balance of power in the NBA was forever altered. This was the night the Bulls' dynasty began, and Detroit's ended. While Detroit entered 1991 showing signs of wear, the Chicago Bulls were peaking at exactly the right time. Under Phil Jackson, the triangle offense had finally taken root, transforming Chicago from a one-man show into a finely tuned machine. Michael Jordan was still the centerpiece, winning his second MVP with 31.5 points per game. But now, he had a fully developed supporting cast ready to shoulder the load. Scottie Pippen blossomed into an all-star, a versatile forward who could guard multiple positions and create offense. Horace Grant added rebounding, defense, and toughness inside. John Paxson provided steady shooting, while Bill Cartwright anchored the middle. The Bulls weren't just dangerous, they were complete.
Back, the Bulls can go up 14. Jordan past Petrovic. I don't care how good you put English on. It doesn't work, guys. Try it. You go to the Y tomorrow.
Their regular season proved it. Chicago stormed to a 61-21 record, the best in the East. Unlike past years, they weren't grinding for wins. They were dictating games with balance, ball movement, and suffocating defense. The playoffs only reinforced their rise. They swept the Knicks in the first round, a statement of dominance. They wasn't chasing the Pistons anymore. They were ready to take what they believed was already theirs. Meanwhile, when the Detroit Pistons entered the 1990-91 season as two-time defending champions, the unquestioned kings of the East, they had built their empire on toughness, depth, and defense, with Isiah Thomas steering the offense and Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, and Rick Mahorn in earlier years enforcing a punishing physical style. By now, their reputation was cemented. The Bad Boys weren't just a basketball team. They were a culture of intimidation.
The Pistons were probably one of the best defensive teams that's probably played in the finals.
But they was physical, that's why, right?
They were so physical, but long. When you have people like Dennis and John Sally, I mean, you might get past Joe Dumars, but you got both of them to contend with.
And Laimbeer.
Yeah, and Laimbeer, he would just slam you, right? I mean, just hard foul you. And
I see
that three-guard combination of Isiah, Joe Dumars, and Vinnie Johnson was unbelievable.
But beneath the surface, cracks were starting to show. The Pistons still won 50 games, good for the third seed in the East, but the dominance they once wielded no longer felt inevitable. Injuries nagged Isiah. Laimbeer wasn't the same force he once was. Their margin for error was slimmer, and younger, hungrier teams were catching up.
Age caught up to the Detroit Pistons in some ways. Injuries, it gets tiring.
87, 88, 89, 90, 91, like 5 straight years you're playing until at least early June. It was just mental fatigue, physical fatigue. We had had a long run, and a lot of the things came crumbling down on us at that point.
Their playoff journey showed both resilience and vulnerability. In the first round, Atlanta pushed them to a decisive Game 5. Then came Boston, where Larry Bird's Celtics managed to take 2 games before Detroit closed the series in 6. The Pistons survived, but they didn't look invincible. Still, they carried history into the Eastern Conference Finals. They had beaten Jordan 3 years straight. They had the blueprint to stop him. At least, they thought they did.
Jordan was Jordan. He the best player on the planet. He just needed some help. And that 91 series, Scottie Pippen grew up.
We had no answer for Michael or Scottie. I knew that we couldn't beat the Bulls. We couldn't beat them at all, no matter what we did.
Beautiful backdoor pass for Pippen, and he is walloped.
You see, this series was more than just another playoff matchup. It was personal to MJ. No team had tormented him more than the Detroit Pistons. For 3 straight years, they stood between him and the finals. In 1988, the Bulls lost in the Eastern semifinals, a hard-fought 5-game series where Jordan carried an undermanned roster but simply ran out of help. In 1989, it was heartbreak again. Chicago pushed Detroit to 6 games in the conference finals, but Isiah and Laimbeer's physical edge proved too much. Then came 1990, the most crushing blow of all. A 7-game battle where Jordan was hounded by the infamous Jordan rules, a defensive scheme designed to wear him down with double teams, traps, and brutal contact every time he touched the ball. Detroit broke him, mentally and physically, sending Chicago home once again.
Interpretation of the Jordan rules are this. There are 3 areas on the floor the Pistons need to be concerned about. He's sensational when he dribbles to his right. He's only great when he goes left. They will force him left as much as possible from the top of the circle area. When Michael Jordan has the ball on the foul line extended or wing area, he is so good, too good, at going baseline, coming back up under the basket, getting fouls on the big people. So instead, the Pistons will force him to come to the middle of the floor off the dribble, trying to get help from the next defender.
Those scars ran deep. Every foul, every loss, every smirk from Laimbeer or shrug from Isiah fueled Jordan's determination. By 1991, he wasn't just the league's best scorer. He was its most complete player. Stronger physically, smarter with his decisions, and surrounded by a team that believed as much as he did. Jordan was ready to destroy the narrative. For Jordan, beating the Pistons wasn't just about advancing to the finals. It was about redemption. It was about proving that the bad boys could no longer hold him down.
We were so much more mentally strong. We were so much more physically ready for any challenges that they threw at us.
Scottie Pippen is just on fire.
They weren't a fragile, mental weak team anymore. You couldn't mentally fatigue them.
The 1991 Eastern Conference Finals tipped off in Chicago, and right away, the tone felt different. In Game 1, the Bulls seized control with a 94-83 win. For Detroit, it was a warning shot. They had always been the ones dictating pace, setting the tone, and intimidating Chicago. But this time, Jordan and the Bulls looked unshaken.
Bulls went 50 and Laimbeer able to recover. Here's Jordan. Yes. Michael Jordan is 4 out of 8. He has 12. Game 2 will take place here in Chicago on Tuesday. Jordan sweeping through. Going the uncontested. And that will do it. The Chicago Bulls over the Detroit Pistons in Game 1 by the score of 94-83. So they take the opener. They jumped in front with that 20-8 spurt.
Game 2 now loomed as a turning point. The Pistons had been here before, dropped the opener, then claw back into the series with physicality and resolve. To them, stealing a game on Chicago's floor was crucial. If they could even the series, they'd reclaim momentum heading back to the Palace of Auburn Hills. But for Jordan and the Bulls, Game 2 was about something bigger than protecting home court. It was about sending a message. Beating Detroit once could be brushed off as an anomaly. Beating them twice in a row with dominance would signal the end of the Pistons' psychological edge. The air inside the United Center was electric. Fans sensed their team was on the verge of a breakthrough, and Jordan's eyes told the same story. He wasn't just locked in, he was ready to dismantle the very foundation of Detroit's swagger. For Isiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, Game 2 was a chance to reassert control. Instead, it became the night Michael Jordan humiliated them in front of the basketball world.
Thanks, Barb. Now, having been around these two teams the last couple of days, a contrasting attitude. I talked to Michael Jordan, and he said, as fired up as I've seen him in quite some time, we still have the same goals. We know it has to go through Detroit, and we are ready. On the Detroit side, when I saw them come to the stadium today, it reminded me of that picture of those soldiers marching with the beat up and bandaged with the pipe and the drum. That's the way they look. But one thing they do have in Detroit is pride. Championship pride. When I spoke to Isiah Thomas, he said, all year long I've been reading that Chicago wanted us badly. Well, here we are, so let's get it on.
The opening minutes of Game 2 showed just how much Michael Jordan had evolved. In past years, he might have come out firing shot after shot, trying to overpower Detroit on his own. But this time, his first statement wasn't with his scoring, it was with his trust. On the very first possession, he attacked the paint and kicked out to John Paxson for a wide-open jumper. 2 plays, 2 assists, and an immediate reminder that the Bulls weren't just Jordan anymore. They were a team.
Jordan has to dish off Paxson for 2.
Moments later, Jordan drew the defense into the lane, collapsing 2 Pistons onto him. Instead of forcing a contested shot, he slipped a perfect pass to Horace Grant for an easy lay.
Dumar's on Jordan. Has a clear out. Nice.
Those early reads cracked Detroit's shell. The Pistons came in ready to swarm Jordan, but he punished them for overcommitting. With his teammates engaged, the floor opened up, and Jordan began picking his spots. Mid-range jumpers over the defender, quick bursts to the rim, and transition finishes electrified the United Center crowd.
The crowd gave him a 10, 14 already for Dumars. Not bad considering he had 9 in Game 1. Jordan for 2.
It's playing Jordan. Watch how he fights through the screen, fights through the Pippen screen. Now he's up in there. He thinks that he's discouraged the shot. Michael just takes it right.
Defensively, the Bulls suffocated Detroit. Pippen hounded Isiah Thomas, forcing tough shots and disrupting passing lanes. Laimbeer tried to muscle inside, but Grant and Cartwright stood their ground. Every possession felt like a grind for the Pistons, while the Bulls flowed with confidence. By the end of the first quarter, the Bulls were firmly in control. Jordan dropped 13 points, and he was orchestrating the offense, lifting everyone around him. The bad boys were on the back foot, and the humiliation had only begun.
It was close. Tries to spin on Grant. No place to go. Jordan slapping the ball away. It's showtime. Get the cameras rolling.
If the first quarter showed Jordan's growth as a playmaker, the second quarter was all about his dominance as a scorer. The Pistons adjusted, tightening their defense on the perimeter and daring him to take contested shots. Jordan answered with one of the most efficient stretches of his career.
Third quarter. Dumars punching away at the ball on Jordan. Jordan pulls the trigger.
He started with a pull-up jumper over Isiah Thomas, clean, effortless, and right in the heart of Detroit's captain. Then came a dazzling drive to the paint. Jordan absorbed the contact, floated through, and almost made the tough basket over Laimbeer. He calmly sank both free throws, a sign that he was now more matured than ever.
Points that quarter.
Livingston. Hodges being hounded by Thomas. To Jordan. What a pass. The shot won't go, but he does get the foul.
And they give him a 2-shot foul. Watch the straight backdoor by Michael. And Laimbeer just takes him down hard. And so did Isiah from the rim. And both should end up probably around 30 points. Attempts in the 9 previous plays.
The Pistons, meanwhile, looked out of rhythm. Isiah tried to push the tempo, but kept running into Pippen's length. Laimbeer clanked jumpers from the outside, desperate to space the floor. Even Dennis Rodman struggled to contain Chicago's movement, chasing Grant across screens. Jordan didn't let up. He buried jumper after jumper, seemingly automatic from mid-range. Every time Detroit thought they had him walled off, he rose above their defense with precision. By halftime, he had already tallied over 20 points on near-perfect shooting.
19 and 20. You just can't get it done on the road that way. Michael Jordan, who Chuck Daly said.
The Bulls jogged into the locker room with a double-digit lead. Detroit's old formula, the Jordan rules, was useless. This wasn't the same Michael Jordan they had bullied for years. This was a player in full command, and humiliation was unfolding possession by possession. When the teams came out of the locker room, Chicago made it clear the night wasn't just about winning. It was about breaking Detroit's spirit. Michael Jordan picked up right where he left off, rim running with no remorse and drawing the contact leading to him walking to the line for free throws every time.
John said it's the last 10 Piston points, make it 8 of 10. Levingston, back Jordan. Hello! Oh, it almost went down. Michael, listen. That's a beautiful pass. As he gets fouled, he brings it behind, and he just flips it up on the glass. Almost got the curl. Abdul-Jabbar with the Milwaukee Bucks, the last to accomplish it.
But this quarter wasn't just Jordan. His teammates piled on. Moments after his first basket, Jordan drove into the paint, drawing Laimbeer and Rodman, and kicked the ball out to Scottie Pippen. Pippen calmly drilled the jumper, his confidence on full display. The Bulls were no longer a one-man army. They were a machine. Detroit tried to fight back, but every attempt felt desperate. Laimbeer's hard fouls came too late. Rodman scrambled on defense but looked frustrated, and Isiah couldn't shake free from Pippen's relentless pressure. Every possession ended in either a contested shot or a turnover, while the Bulls carved them apart with fluid ball movement.
Morris has come back with only 3 since then. Jordan, the hang, doesn't get it, but he goes hard to the floor. Jordan perfect from the line.
Jordan, meanwhile, was operating at peak efficiency. A soaring reverse layup ignited the crowd, followed by a defensive play in transition that turned United Center into a frenzy. By the middle of the quarter, he had Detroit completely demoralized. As the horn sounded to end the third, the scoreboard told the story. The Bulls were up big. The Pistons were gassed, and the balance of power in the East was shifting right before everyone's eyes. By the time the fourth quarter began, the Bulls had weathered Detroit's best shot. Michael Jordan's first 3 quarters were telling. 20 points on just 16 shots, 5 assists, and a handful of defensive plays that showed his fingerprints everywhere. But what stood out most wasn't his stat line. It was the ball movement on the floor and guys playing with synergy.
Possibly because we didn't get any notice, but then again, we did not see him get injured. Livingston, his shot is blocked. He also has a twisted ankle. It's a real solid move that time by Cliff. And
Chicago built a comfortable lead as Jordan caught fire, but Detroit quickly fought back, showing just how determined they were to stop him. The Pistons collapsed the lane on every possession, daring Chicago's supporting cast to make plays. This time, the Bulls held their composure and finished the game in control. On the other end, Detroit's frustration boiled over. Their press lacked bite, their half-court sets sputtered, and by the time the clock ticked under 5 minutes, it was clear the Bulls had the game, and the series under control.
Rodman for 3, forces it up, doesn't get it. Williams with the rebound. He comes out of the pack with it. Jordan will be fouled by Dumars. 24 points, 5 assists. He's concerned about him at halftime with only 8, and no fouls out of 10 for no rebound. And it is a 6-point margin with 8 seconds left. Detroit out of timeouts. Henderson fouls Jordan and do an excellent job in dominating what you wanted to set out to do from an offensive standpoint.
In the final moments, the Bulls had full control, dictating the pace and keeping Detroit at bay. The Pistons resorted to fouling, hoping to stop the clock and force mistakes, but it was no use. Chicago stayed composed, hitting their free throws and maintaining their lead, leaving Detroit unable to mount a comeback. Jordan didn't need a monster scoring finish. His restraint, his gravity, and his leadership sealed the deal. Chicago wasn't just winning, they were growing past the Pistons.
35 points, 27 in the second half, and that will wrap it up from Chicago as the Bulls have taken a 2-0 lead in the best-of-7 Eastern Conference Final Series.
Game 2 wasn't just a win, it was the breaking point. From there, the Bulls never looked back. They closed out the Eastern Conference Finals with a 4-0 sweep, finally putting the Pistons dynasty to bed. For years, Chicago had been stuck in Detroit's shadow, beaten down by the bad boys' physicality and playoff experience. But in 1991, the script flipped. The Bulls were tougher, sharper, and more united. Detroit's intimidation tactics no longer worked, and their aura of invincibility vanished. The sweep became infamous not just for the result, but for the image that followed. In Game 4, as the final seconds ticked away, Isiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, and several Pistons left the court without shaking hands. To them, it was defiance. To everyone else, it was bitterness, the final act of a dethroned champion.
And the cameras were following them the whole way.
Bill Laimbeer is walking all up like this, and Isiah just dips around him. But the way it looked like Isiah was trying not to be seen.
Watching them walk by our bench and not even have the dignity to raise their head up, I don't even know if I'd have shook their hands anyway.
Chicago, meanwhile, had their eyes on a bigger prize. In the finals, they met Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers. After dropping Game 1, the Bulls stormed back, winning 4 straight to capture their first NBA championship. For Michael Jordan, it was validation. Not only had he conquered Detroit, but he now stood at the top of the basketball world.
Three-point attempt blocked. Pippen comes away with it. And the Chicago Bulls have won their first ever NBA championship.
Game 2 of the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals wasn't just another playoff contest. It was the night the league's balance of power shifted. After years of frustration against the bad boys, Michael Jordan and the Bulls finally stood tall. This wasn't only about scoring, it was about leadership, composure, and proving that Chicago could handle every punch Detroit threw. Isiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer, once the faces of dominance in the East, found themselves on the wrong side of history. Their toughness, intimidation, and mind games had defined the Pistons' dynasty. But in this matchup, those tactics fell flat. Chicago stayed locked in, Jordan dictated the flow, and the Pistons' edge evaporated in front of a roaring United Center crowd. The image of Detroit walking off in Game 4 would become the defining snapshot of the series, but the real turning point happened here in Game 2. This was when it became clear that the Bulls weren't the hunted anymore. They were the hunters. Chicago's victory marked the end of Detroit's reign and the beginning of something greater. Jordan, Pippen, and their supporting cast had matured into a group ready to carry the weight of a dynasty. Game 2 was more than a statement. It was the birth of an era. From this moment on, the NBA belonged to the Chicago Bulls.